On today's show, the Cavs look to make it 4 wins in 5 games tonight as they take on the Sacramento Kings. Matt George from Sactown 1140 stops by to tell us everything we need to know about Sacramento, including whether or not the Cavs and Kings could potentially make a trade in the coming weeks. We'll do that on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everybody. My name is Danny Cunningham, and you're listening to another edition of Locked On Cavs, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of America. You can find this podcast and any other Locked On podcast anywhere you get them. That means Apple, that means Spotify, that means YouTube as well. If you're watching right now as we get started, please do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest from Locked On Cavs. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Cavs are back in action tonight at home. It is a 1-game homestand, if you want to call it that. They take on the Kings on Friday before they head down to Orlando for a game on Saturday against the Magic. And Sacramento has played better basketball as of late. They're not a very good team. They come into this game with only 12 wins on the season. They're a team that many, including my guest coming up in just a second, Matt George, expect to make some trades as the deadline approaches. The Cavs could potentially be a team that calls Sacramento for a couple of different players. Matt and I dive into that during the conversation, but we also talk about some of the younger guys that have been playing well and some of the reasons why the Kings have won 4 games out of their past 10, because they went on a 4-game winning streak that made some people in Sacramento feel good. So without anything else from me, here's my conversation with Matt George. He is the host of Matt and Kayla on Sactown 1140 out in Sacramento. He is one of the leading voices of coverage of the Sacramento Kings, and you can find his new podcast, the appropriately named The Matt George Podcast.
Original,
everywhere
I know.
you get your podcast. Original. It is Matt George, formerly of Locked On Kings, still a friend of ours who, as I said, does a fantastic job covering the Sacramento Kings no matter what direction that organization is trending in, which for the most part, I think through our lives seems to be down. But Matt, they have won, I guess, 4 of their last 10 games. They went on a 4-game winning streak before it was snapped over the weekend by the Portland Trailblazers. And we're recording this on Monday evening Eastern time. So there's a lot that's going to happen between the time we're speaking and when the Cavs will take on the Sacramento Kings for the first 2 matchups this season. But what's going on in Sacramento, man?
Well, it does seem like they're starting to figure some things out. It seems like they found groups that are cohesive together. I think the play of the Kings' 2 rookie centers, Dylan Cardwell and Maxime Reynaud, has added some much needed rim protection, particularly from Dylan Cardwell, that has allowed the Sacramento Kings defensively to be a little more aggressive on the perimeter, knowing that they have a force or a couple bodies in the paint that can protect the rim and make life a little bit difficult if they get beat off the dribble. And that's something that they really haven't had for a while. Now, granted, they just lost to the Trailblazers, who I think scored 62 points in the paint. So it's not like they're unbeatable. We're still talking about a 2nd-round pick and a undrafted rookie center here. We're not talking about world beaters necessarily. Russell Westbrook is playing out of his mind right now. DeMar DeRozan continues to be very, very efficient. Everybody seems to be shooting the ball well finally at the same time, and the Kings aren't getting killed from the perimeter 3-point wise at the moment. So it's kind of been a combination of things starting to go right for the Kings all of a sudden. It helps that it's during a extended homestand. The only problem is, though, this is at a time where the Sacramento Kings, well, at least outside of the players and the coaches, are not too interested in winning basketball games. Like I have to imagine if Scott Perry's looking at this, he's going, no, stop it. And that might be speeding up his desire to try and make some trades here, as we expect the Sacramento Kings to be sellers at this upcoming trade deadline. But they figured some things out, and they're having a little bit more fun playing basketball, which, based off how this season started, I guess that's nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that you can have these pockets of fun and still find a way to finish in the bottom 4 where you get the best lottery odds, which I would assume is one of the goals of the Sacramento Kings. But when you said they seem to be figuring things out, the first question that came to my mind is, well, should they be trying to actually figure things out, or should they just trade guys?
Yeah, they are, regardless of them figuring things out or not, they should be aggressively trying to trade. And we know they are. Scott Perry is involved in numerous conversations around the league. Any report or rumor out there seems to have the Sacramento Kings loosely connected, from the Kings checking in on Ja Morant, although they're not exactly interested in him because they don't want to give up what he's going to require to. We know the ongoing Jonathan Kuminga saga that seemingly will never end because of the stubbornness of the Golden State Warriors. Regardless, like, the Kings are aggressively trying to shop some players. They're trying to move on from some of these veterans, get younger, and ultimately free up rotational opportunities to go full on youth movement through the remainder of this season. If they lose basketball games, well, great. If they win games because their youth is playing well, that's an easier pill to swallow than winning games because Russ and DeMar and Levine are each scoring 20 plus and ultimately giving you nothing in this meaningless season and towards the future of the Kings, which is where their attention has shifted now to start a true rebuild. So the Kings definitely want to make some trades, but at the same time, we're seeing this group that was like the island of misfit toys, right? This hodgepodge collection of talent, some massive names, unbelievably talented individuals that just weren't really cohesive. We're starting to see some cohesiveness. It's too little too late, though. And I don't want to hear a dang thing about the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I don't think the play-in should be the goal. I don't think they'll get there either, despite the fact that they've, as we mentioned, won 4 of their last 10 games. Those 4 games were in a row. But you mentioned some of the names like a DeMar DeRozan, a Russell Westbrook, Zach LaVine even. Like, where do you think those guys ultimately end up? Should the Kings move on from them? And what do you think the Kings should be looking to get in return?
Well, I don't think Russ is going anywhere. I think the Kings view Russ actually as part of the future because as crazy and sporadic as Russ can be, he's a leader by example. When I say the future, I mean the remainder of this season. He's on a 1-year deal. I don't think Russ is coming back next year. I do expect Russ to play next year. He's kind of blown off and brushed off any idea that this is his last season. And I don't think it'll be with the Sacramento Kings unless no other team wants him. I think DeMar DeRozan should be gone. I think the Kings are going to do what they can to trade DeMar. His market is less appealing than I thought it would be. Now, part of this is just scared money in general, but DeMar, only $10 million of his $20+ million contract next year is guaranteed. So a team like the Cavaliers, I think, makes a lot of sense. Could take a flyer on DeMar DeRozan, bring in a mercenary scorer off the bench. And if it doesn't work out, then you're only on the hook for $10 million next year and you can kind of wipe your hands and move on. But what DeMar is showing this season is that he doesn't need to be option number 1 and take a high volume of shots to be efficient. Like his scoring numbers are down. His shooting attempts, shot attempts are down, but his shooting percentages are up across the board. His steals are up. He's showing that he can be efficient without being a focal point. And as we know, any team that's trading for him is not bringing him in to be a number 1 or number 2 guy. If they are, then they're probably not a very good basketball team. So that's why I always thought, like in the case of the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's funny. The Cavs are a team that I've used a lot. It's like, that's a team that I could see being interested in a DeRozan type mercenary scorer off the bench if they feel they need that extra push. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I don't think Zach LaVine and Domantas Sabonis are going anywhere simply because they're 2 of the worst contracts in the NBA. And like I said, everybody's scared money because of the apron system. I think Keon Ellis will for sure be gone. The question is, what can you get for him? Because he's only paid like $3 million this year. He's on a steal of a contract. Can you get a 2nd-round pick for him or add him as a sweetener to a deal? And I think the Kings are also shopping both Dennis Schroeder and Malik Monk, although it doesn't sound like Malik has much of a market. And Schroeder might have a decent market because he's got 2 years left on his deal, 14-ish million next year. And then the final year is like a $15.5 million payday, but only $4 million of it is guaranteed. So you can get off that money soon as well. So the Kings are shopping. The Kings are absolutely shopping, and they're open for business.
More of my conversation with Matt in just a second, but first, today's show is brought to you by Gametime. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everybody on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. And that's where Gametime comes in. The Gametime app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without all the guesswork that you think might come along with it. Browsing the Gametime app, very easy. It's straightforward. It's simple, and you can find tickets in just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy, and you can be confident in your purchase. One of the features that Gametime has is you can click on a seat. Say Friday night, you want to go watch the Cavs take on the Kings on Friday in the afternoon, in the early evening. Open up the Gametime app, pick a seat, any seat in the arena, and it will show you what your view of the court will be like. Gametime does that because it makes the ticket buying process easier, and they don't have fees that are going to surprise you at checkout. The price you see early on, that's the price you're going to pay when it comes time to buy. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKED NBA for $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays, hey, that's today, already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better because every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame. It's a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern time have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. That's today. The Cavs play at 7:30. Tip-off actually going to be 7:40. But you can hang out on the FanDuel app from 6 until 7:30 and then watch the Cavs game, so you get whatever you can find on the FanDuel app, right? And it's going to be different every week. They're going to have boosts, they're going to have bonuses, and they're going to have other surprises, and you can check that out tonight. It's easy to check the specials before tip-off and make a move before the window closes, and it adds just a little bit of extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Well, since you brought them up, what do you think a Cavs-Kings trade would look like? Should one be made? And you brought up DeMar DeRozan as a guy that's interesting. I'm not sure that the Cavs would have interest in him, but I'm curious from your perspective what you think that deal would look like.
See, if I'm the Sacramento Kings, I'm not walking into any deal with expectations, if that makes sense. And so I'm not looking at the Cavaliers, and I'm not saying like, the Cavs can fleece Sacramento necessarily, but we know that in whatever trade the Kings are making, the best player in the deal is being sent out, right? There's no real scenario unless the Kings tried to put together some like out of nowhere blockbuster offer for Darius Garland. And I know they like Darius Garland a lot, but we have to be realistic here. The Kings are not interested in including any draft compensation period in the deal. They'd like to take some draft compensation or ultimately get younger. So if there's and I don't have the roster in front of me necessarily, but if there's a Cavaliers player that was a rotational player, kind of a younger guy, more of a project, someone that the Kings could kind of get their hands on and work with over the next couple of years that's not owed a ton of money for a DeRozan or a Monk or a Schroeder or whatever the Cavs may like on the Kings roster. That's essentially what they're looking for, and it would be that same way with any team they negotiate. They're not star hunting. Of course, they absolutely should not be. They're not, they would love to get draft picks, but this is an era of the NBA right now where nobody wants to include draft compensation in any trades, and the Kings can't demand it for really anybody outside of Domantas Sabonis. And even then, Sabonis's contract is so bad, or Keegan Murray, I guess, but Sabonis's contract is so bad that you're just not going to get anybody to take it right now, realistically, in my mind. So I don't know if that makes sense necessarily. It's not super specific in a Cleveland Cavaliers conversation, but I want Cavs fans to know that if you're working with the Sacramento Kings, if you're negotiating with the Kings, you're going to get the better end of the deal. It's just what possibly can the Kings get back that's not insulting, if that makes sense.
Fair. That is a fair way to look at it. One of the questions I ask when teams are like starting to climb out of a rebuild, as opposed to the position I think the Kings are in, where they're sort of should be entering, like tearing it down a little bit more.
Yeah.
One of the questions I ask is who on the roster is like going to be on the same team, like in Sacramento, the next time they make the playoffs or the next time they win a playoff series. I think that's a little far down the line considering where they're at right now. So I'll modify that. Who in Sacramento right now do you think is still going to be on the roster with the Kings the next time Sacramento is above 500 for the season?
I think they're hoping Keegan Murray. Scott Perry extended Keegan Murray right before the season started and paid him, I think, a little bit more than people expected. He got paid more than Jabari Smith Jr. got in Houston, which surprised some people in like the mid-20s range. Keegan is struggling still as a 3-point shooter. He's been on a steady decline since that fantastic rookie season that he had, but he continues to improve as a defender. He's blocking more shots, creating more steals. He's doing a better job scoring off the dribble, especially with the mid-range, attacking the basket better. It's just that 3-point shot that has to catch up. But I think we have a pretty good idea that Keegan Murray is not going to be a top 1, 2, or maybe even 3 offensive option on a good basketball team. But he still could be a very, very important piece to a good team going forward. So I'd like to imagine the Sacramento Kings view Keegan as that, or they feel they could trade him down the road if that doesn't end up being the case. And then you have to always look at your own rookies, like Dylan Cardwell, undrafted, but Dylan Cardwell might be part of that. Maxime Reynaud was drafted and has shown tremendous growth as a second-round pick. Neat Clifford, who was their first-round pick, they moved into the first round to take him at 24. He's been the most, I guess, disappointing out of the 3. Of course, there's more expectations on him than anybody else. I don't think he necessarily knows what his NBA role or NBA fit is yet. So those guys and Keegan Murray are the ones that are quote unquote untouchable in trades, but there's no such thing when you're this bad and starting a rebuild. As like everybody's available for the right price. So I think the Kings would like to imagine those guys are part of it. Other than that, I don't think you can look at much of this roster and say they're going to be around.
Yeah, I would imagine that this team's going to look much different next year and probably the year after that, and maybe even the year after that as they try and climb out. Maybe they'll get a little bit of lottery luck, which when you are in the position the Kings are in and you have their picks, that is always the goal because this is supposed to be a loaded draft. We'll see how it shakes out, but maybe the Sacramento Kings, for once in franchise history, will find a little bit of luck at some point. Matt George does a great job covering the Kings. Go on.
To be fair, Danny, like the Kings have had some very decent lottery luck in the past. They jumped all the way up to number 2. We know what they did with that draft pick, and the Keegan Murray draft, they were not supposed to be at 4, and they selected Keegan. So they've had luck jumping up in the lottery. They haven't won the lottery outright, which would be wonderful. But ultimately, if the Kings are going to do this rebuild right, Danny, they have to hit on their draft picks. Like that is it. They have to hit on their draft picks. You do not build a serious contender in Sacramento without doing that consistently. So that's where we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is most certainly part of it. I don't know if you don't consider like Marvin Bagley not hitting on this number 2 overall pick, right? Like did that not work out? Was that not what you were hoping it would be in Sacramento?
This is why I left Locked On. This is why I left Locked On, because of this treatment.
Yes, exactly why you have to get back to everything you're doing on the radio over at Sactown 1140. Check him out, the host of Matt and Kayla and the Matt George podcast. He does a great job covering the Kings and certainly is one of the better guys in the NBA to follow along. Thanks so much for the time, Matt.
Danny, you're the best. Thanks for having me on. I can't wait to do it again.
A big thank you to Matt George for stopping by. Nobody, and I mean this, nobody is better on the Sacramento Kings than Matt George. Make sure you go follow his new podcast, the Matt George Podcast, if you want to learn more about that disaster of a franchise and maybe about some of the players that the Cavs could have interest in trading for. But as we get out of here on YouTube, please do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from me over here at Locked On Cavs. And I will be back after the game on Friday talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.